you can see for the folks who see our video clips, and for the listeners out there, I'm wearing my Conor Daly professional race car driver hat, courtesy of our friends from the shop Indy, because this man isn't just racing an Indy car. He is going to be wheeling it and dealing it at the Daytona 500. Conor Daly, my man, how are you?
Well, you know what? It's going great. But you know what? The funny thing about the Daytona 500 thing is that obviously happened this morning, the announcement. I might have given you guys a little hint when we last recorded as well. There was talk starting to circulate.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a lot's been happening. And look, to start out with the Daytona stuff, we do have to qualify. So that is going to be a tough one. Like there's a lot there, but I couldn't be more excited to have an opportunity to do that. It's part of, a more extensive NASCAR Cup Series program. In the release, they set up to 7 races, which I don't know what that means exactly yet and what the scheduling of those is yet. But it's really cool. I mean, to be able to do that on some off weekends, and even, something that kind of might have been floated in there was we're doing an Indy double, not the 500 double, but the road course one in August. So that I think is going to be really cool to be able to do the IndyCar race and the NASCAR race on the same weekend. Again, that'll take a lot out of me. But I definitely appreciate the fact that Ed Carpenter Racing is also willing to let me do that. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff that bitnile.com is doing for me, for us as a team. And realistically, like, this is all thanks to them. So, bitnile.com is launching a new website, new whole arena of activities on March 1st. So like all of this is part of it. Very, very excited for it. Great supporters of me, of motorsport. And yeah, it's going to be something. I mean, I don't even know what to expect. I was at the Clash over the weekend as well, watching some NASCAR racing in a tiny football stadium. And that was wild, but yeah, man, just excited to see. I mean, why not? If I don't want to get to the end of life and think that I might have had a chance to try to qualify for the Daytona 500, but I didn't because it would be hard and maybe we wouldn't make it. Like, just go give it a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, man, definitely. I mean, so I can't think of a better driver, better personality to do something like this. So it's incredibly exciting. But what you mentioned it a couple weeks ago, like you said, you gave us a little dabble, a little tease, not on the air, but beforehand, we're like, oh, all right, that would be cool. So from that point, that 2 week time frame here, what was the negotiation process like? Like, how did it really come to be where you're going to have the opportunity to qualify to be out there running in Daytona?
Well, the interesting thing about it is we had actually talked about this after we did the Roval last year, like, oh, hey, we should try to do the Daytona 500. And they were like, well, there'll be a lot of guys trying to qualify. Maybe we won't. But we were also working on, these few other cup races, and Elio Castroneves was in talks with the Money Team Racing, who were driving for as well, the number 50 car. And Elio, I think that whole deal basically just didn't happen because there'd be no practice. Elio was probably like, man, I assume Elio was like, I don't need to do it if I'm not gonna, because let's be honest, this team is the smallest team. Like it's a 1-car operation that's just gonna show up to try to qualify against guys that are driving for Colleague, for 2311, for big teams, Jimmy Johnson. I mean, this is a challenge. So I think Elio decided, he's like, maybe not this year, but I bet Elio will have more opportunities to potentially do this race. Whereas like me, I don't know. You know what I mean? This might be, the only shot that I get. So why not take it? And our deal was getting put together for the rest of these races. We're going to do Coda for sure, the Indy double. I don't know what other races were announced yet, but the team was kind of like, well, we do have this car ready for the Daytona 500. Like, why don't we do this as well? And so it was kind of like, all right. And they asked me like, hey, like, do you want to do this? Like, is this okay? I was like, yeah, sure. Like, why not? And I was talking to, Corey LaJoy, some of the other guys. As soon as this opportunity was presented, I called AJ Allmendinger and I called Corey LaJoy and Chase Briscoe. And I talked to Chase Briscoe a long time, and a friend of the show, obviously, both him and AJ. and just kind of chatted with them on like, look, what is to be expected here? What's going to go on? And all of them were like, honestly, if you have nothing to do, nothing to lose, like if your sponsor's still with you, even if you make it or you don't make it, then you might as well give it a shot. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, why not? Because we still get to do a race, right? We get to do one qualifying lap essentially, and then the dual race. So either way, we'll gain experience for something else maybe in the future. But yeah, it kind of all fell into place. And with our launch of the IndyCar, obviously last week, our new bitnow.com scheme, the NASCAR Cup car is going to have a very similar scheme on it, paint scheme. So it's all part of this launch for BitNile and everyone at that group, which is going to be really cool. Honestly, I can talk a little bit more about what they're doing. That's actually fun, really cool. But yeah, it just kind of all came together pretty quickly. And I don't really know what to expect. The first part about it is the fact that Travis Pastrana is also doing it, which is hysterical. Because we started in a truck together a couple years ago, and now we're at the Daytona 500. So that's hysterical. The most ideal scenario is we both make the race, because that would be quite a celebration. But I'm just excited to get out there and experience it. I've been watching this race for years. I love the Daytona 500. I watch everything. I watch the qualifying. I watch the duels. I watch everything. I mean, it's part of beginning your race season viewership, right? Like, it's February. All right, finally motorsport is happening. We got to watch Daytona. And then after Daytona, well, IndyCar starting. So we're all very excited. So it's just something that I could not say no. And it's going to be monumental, the challenge. But I mean, heck, why not? It's Daytona. I mean, just we gotta do it if you got a shot.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, I feel like this is like if somebody was like, "Hey, Joey, you got an audition for Lorne Michaels at SNL on the stage. You can go rip it, or you can." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." I mean, that's quite a leap there, but you got to take advantage of a situation like that. So that's freaking awesome, man. What news to wake up to, no doubt. What was the conversation like, if you can divulge into it a little bit, like you mentioned with Ed Carpenter? Obviously, this is a couple of weeks before the start of the IndyCar season. Was that, A-okay? How did that conversation go to where it was like, hey, I want to go try this out. I'm going to kind of divert my attention there for a little bit. How'd that go?
Well, honestly, I haven't actually directly spoken to Ed about it. Yeah,
Hey,
thankfully, BitNile have been the ones who have been basically talking to Ed and saying like, "Hey, look, we're trying to launch this program. We want to get as much eyeballs as possible. We want to draw as much attention to this website, to this launch as possible." And obviously, they're a huge part of our IndyCar program. They're on all three of our cars, which we saw last week with that announcement. So. And honestly, it doesn't interfere directly with the IndyCar program. If anything, honestly, my thought on it is that if we make the race, actually either way, because the duel is still 60 laps, still a long distance in the car of driving, it prepares me more for St. Pete, honestly, because we've only had 2 test days. We have another test day at Sebring, February 13th, which is literally the day before, like, we go qualify, or 2 days before we try to go qualify for the Daytona 500. But after that, there's no driving until St. Pete. So if I can get my body in that really hot racing environment before I get to St. Pete, I actually think it'll pay off for me in a very, very helpful way. So I think it'll be great. And either way, it gets my mind sharp as well. It keeps everything, on a high level. And yeah, I am thankful that, there hasn't been any open objection to me, dabbling on the side with some NASCAR Cup racing. Now it's going to be different, but again, I've never let anything detract from my IndyCar focus. Like, that is the main goal, the IndyCar season, the Indy 500, all of that stuff. But keeping the mind sharp, keeping the body in race mode, I think is super helpful for me. It always has been. And yeah, I couldn't be more excited. I think that's
Yeah,
really That's really it. But also, I have no idea what's going to happen. So I don't know what it's going to feel like. I've been watching a bunch of onboard clips. I'm expected to just go out and literally not lift off the throttle for qualifying, because obviously 2 cars make it on qualifying speed, but it'll be tough for us to make that, I think. But yeah, I'm still not even too familiar with how the situation works. But I know that there's 40, and Ben, you might know a little bit more about this than I do, but I think there's like 42 cars trying to qualify for 40 spots. So
yeah,
I guess that means that, you know, there's only 2 cars that go home. So just have to be not one of those people.